Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Vandy. I'm back in a Carpe Vanguard deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, Mr. Story. This time we're covering DZ Set 2 for Stoicheia, Lascaria. So Lascaria is one of the new defensive decks that have come out. I think Bushy now has made 3 defensive decks: Sienna, Lascaria, and Andral for Lrra Monasterio, Stoicheia, and Dark Age respectively. And people wanted defensive decks for a while. And Lascaria is a good defensive deck that has a decent offense. I want to say it's amazing, at least compared to other decks' offense. Black mired, but either way though, it has the ability to go on offense when needed, and it has a large amount of defense power to keep itself alive. Too bad I am too cautious with the blitz order and don't use it as often as I should. So let's get into this deck profile starter, shall we, and see what we got. First up today, we have our energy generator. So it's a new ride deck crest that every deck is getting now. You may have one ride deck crest in your ride deck. Auto ride deck, when you would ride, put this card into your crest zone. If you win second, energy charge 3. That continues, you may have the 10 energies. And auto, beginning of your ride phase, energy charge 3. Act once per turn, energy blast 7, draw a card. All around pretty solid. If you are me and you are necessarily cautious with the blitz order spamming, then maybe you should use this to draw a card. But honestly, don't, because the blitz order costs you EB to actually use, and you can play multiple orders a turn with it, so you want to have as much EB saved up as possible, which is really good that the rest of the deck doesn't use up EB, though I do hope in the future we get a support card that does use EB, but specifically only 2, so therefore we don't have to fluctuate too much with EB usage. Either way though, it's nice that EB charges 3 a turn, and if you go second, you'll probably almost never have problems with EB. And even if you do end up going second and then use the EB to Energy Blast 7 to draw a card, you'll still have enough to use at least one blitz order. So all around, very solid card. It's nice to have. And then we move on to our actual deck. So first up, we have our starter in Times of Happiness, Lascaria, grade 0 boost, 5k, 6k, basically auto road pipe, where I can draw a card. Standard start about it. It's just a free draw if you go second. None of the ride line really requires her, so you can run any starter you want. But I choose to run Lascaria as the starter because it fits the theme of the rest of the deck of, being Lascaria / Velino card. So one of her in the ride deck. Then we have our triggers, which we run to over trigger in Source Dragon Deity of Blessings, Bless Faith Or. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, over trigger, over trigger in your deck, and reveals, add a trigger with that card, draw a card, choose one moods. It gets plus 1 for the turn. If you visit it during your check, activate its additional effect, where you get to draw a card, choose one units, it gets a crit for the turn. All your form gets plus 10,000 power, presumably for the turn, even though it doesn't say that. And then if your damage zone has the same number of cards, if your opponent's damage zone is more, choose a card from damage zone to heal it. All around, pretty solid, as you guarantee to get the draw in a million regardless if you damage check it or drive check it. But then if you drive check it, on top of the regular draw in a million, you get a secondary draw. Someone gets a crit, either the Vanguard or the thing you're giving the million to. Your entire front row gets another 10k, and then you get a heal trigger, possibly. Like, Bless for War is an everything bagel, and I love it, and that's why I love pulling Bless for War, because it's both the least broken and probably one of the more broken of the over triggers, because depending on when you pull it, it can completely reverse the situation, or it just makes winning for your opponent a hell of a lot harder, but it doesn't make it impossible for them to win. That's why I love Bless for War. It's really cool. I love pulling it. I love its effects so much. So you can run Volnut for multi-attack, which is fair, but I like Bless for War. And move on to our normal triggers. We run 3 copies of Abyss Temptation. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. This can really be any crit. I just run Abyss Temptation because I copied this deck off of Zorga. So yeah, I didn't really feel like changing it. So we run 3 crits in that. Then we run 4 more crits in Inspiring Maiden Alana. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 4k power. Critical trigger, auto rear guard. I'm going to boost it, put it to soul, choose one use, it gets 2k for the turn. If you are playing against a rear guard nuke deck and you end up with a very specific hand, Alana will be your lifesaver, being able to go to soul. That 2k will do nothing, but being able to go to soul will be your lifesaver. But we run 7 crits for pressure because the Vanguard already has extra crit. We do have a restanding rear guard. We get 5k to the entire board. It's nice to run extra crits for more pressure. And then, speaking of which, we also run funds for more pressure because this deck can consistently get rear guards out from the drop zone. So unless your opponent is constantly binding your rears, and even Blagmire can't really deal with this, you are pretty much safe to run front triggers. Like, the only reason this deck lost to Blagmire on my channel is just because Blagmire overwhelmed it with power. The binds did nothing to slow it down. Anyways, Frenzied Hair is a grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power. It's a front trigger, contains guard, circle points, Vanguards are grade 3 or greater because I can shield, so it's a 20k guard, which is nice to have in a defensive deck. And not to mention that it's a front trigger, adding more power to the front row, meaning even if you're not Persona riding each turn, you have a chance to get an extra 10k and just outright pressure your opponent, especially with a restanding rear guard. All around pretty solid, so we run, we run 11 offensive triggers, 4 of which being fronts, 7 of them being crits. And then we have Cheery Support Elf, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, standard heal, none special, a free heal. It's nice to have. You can really run any heal you want. You can even run the counter heals, but I choose not to run the counter heals because if do situational, being fluctuating 10 to 25k shields, I'd much rather have a consistent 15k shield, but run whatever heal you want. Then move on to our grade 1s. First one, 4 copies of Velino, Soldato, Chidori, Chidoraka. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, aka base, auto rear guard at the end of your turn if you have 5 or more units with Volino in their card names. I love how all of them just require 5 or more units, then they don't have to be different card names, meaning A, you can just have a bunch of stuff on the board with the same name, so a bloom is possible with them if they ever get a bloom ability, or if you ever play them in premium. But the other important part is you don't have to have a full board, you just have to have mostly full board, which is nice. But continuing the skill, counterboss 1, put it to bottom of the deck, jump to 2 blitz orders from your drops and put them to your hand. Cool. We have a way to recycle the really cool blitz order that I should not be so cautious with. I know it was only one match that I was cautious with it, and that was the match against Blagmire where I was specifically saving them to deal with Blagmire, and then it didn't work out. But now for some reason that is the only thing I remember me using with Volino, and that was that occasion where I was holding them back. Even though I know in the other matchups I was not nearly as cautious. I was still somewhat cautious, but not that cautious. So being able to bot deck itself and get more Volinos back in deck is solid because they have a good amount of searching power, but also being able to get 2 orders back is great. The only way this could have been better as if it was a Soul Blast one instead. And the reason why I said that, even though we have a really good Soul Blaster that it would compete with, is the fact that it's a card that competes with another Soul Blaster, and all of our remaining CB can go to the Restander and or Lockdown strategy. But on the bright side, when we get more Volinos in the future, hopefully we get more Volinos in the future, it'll allow the deck to become more either control-based or more aggro-based, and then there will only be 1 to 2 Counter Blasters per deck. So there's that, but in this deck currently there's 3 because you're trying to combine those 2 styles together because it gives you more Volinos. So 4 of Chidoraka, all around a very solid card. It can get you back blitz orders and can bot deck itself, and it's a Volino, so even if you don't use a skill, it's good worth running for that alone. So 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of straight up my favorite searcher of all time, and that is Volino from Agilia Fordea. I don't know why I feel that the satisfaction of saying that name like that. That was a pure accident, by the way, because for those of you that don't know, I don't record with scripts. That it just goes off of like whatever's on my head. So that saying it like that was pure in the moment, and I loved it. Anyways, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto and place on rear guard circle if your Vanguard of the Lascaria and his card name. So it works while you're on the grade 1, works while you're on the grade 2, works while you're on the grade 3. How about summoning the top 5 cards of your deck to 1 Volino and its card name, or up to 1 Blitz, or from 1 reveal, put it to hand, shuffle your deck. Okay, so here's the important part. She can net you a Persona Rai, because the main grade 3 does have Volino and its card name, but the more important part is she can hit herself. And the reason why I mentioned this is because almost every single time I use her, at least the first time I use her, I will end up hitting a second one. And then I will proceed to call that second one. And then I'll use that second one to see a third one, but I won't add the third one because I will most likely have seen either a Restander or a rear guard caller. But Ferrari is really good, especially when I use her because she apparently just likes to search herself. And then continues rear guard during your turn. If you have a Vanguard of the Lascaria and its card name, she gives 2k power. So she's a 10k on rear, which isn't that great. But then when you combine it with Lascaria's skill, who gives all your Volinos 5k, she's a 15k booster or swinger. Which all around is pretty solid to have, so she's an easy and nice 4 of. Again, searches herself, and also 15k booster. Nice to have. Then we have 4 copies of our PG and Honeycomb Zyrus. Grade 1 boost, 0.6k base, continuous Sentinel. If you have to only 4 Sentinels in the deck, on put a guard circle. Choose one of you. It cannot be hit on battle, and if your hand has 2 more cards in it, choose a card from your hand and discard. Standard PG, nothing too special about it. Basically means if this only one of the card is in your hand, we place it on guard circle. You don't have to discard one, which is great because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game. Spam the hell out of Ferrari unless your opponent can board nuke you and specifically bind you. Even if they can board nuke you, call her anyways, because if you can't tell, she works when she's placed from drop. So, rush with her, rush with this. If they kill your board, so be it. Call them back via other cards. And then when your opponent counterattacks you, because you've used up pretty much all your offense in the early game, throw down Zyrus when you have little to no hand cards. Give them the middle finger. Like, this deck has so much defensive options. You just have to use it properly and not try to build up to 1 block against Blagmire. Again, that's the only time I've ever stockpiled guard power like that. It didn't work, and now for some reason that is the only thought I can think of when I'm playing this deck. I don't know why. Like, the one time I messed up is the one time that I can only see in my head. Anyways, 4 of Zyrus, that's to have. It's a good PG. You can run Planet Prevent Dragon or Custodial Dragon. They do the exact same thing. But I prefer Zyrus because she comes out close to the time of Volino's release. And move on to our last grade 1. One of them in the right deck, none in the main deck, because it has no rear guard skills, and it's not a Volino, sadly. And that is Days of Training Lascaria, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto win, wrote upon by a grade 2 card of Lascaria and its card name. Search your deck for up to 1 grade 2 or greater blitz order without Regalia's piece, reveal, put it to hand, shuffle your deck. All around pretty solid because it allows you to hit your most important card of the deck, the most important defensive card of the deck, and add it to your hand, which is for free, which all around pretty solid, and all only works by being wrote upon by a grade 2 of Lascaria and its card name. Basically meaning if Bushy ever upgrades the ride line, and they give us a new grade 2 with Lascaria in its card name, therefore the grade 1 works with that grade 2, as long as that grade 2 does not require a new grade 1. One of Lascaria in the ride deck, she searches your most important defensive card. It's nice to have. Speaking of said defensive card, 4 copies of our only Blitz order in this deck, but the only Blitz order we actually need, Effervescent Shadow Dreamblade. Grade 2, not Grade 2 normal order, Grade 2 Blitz order, play it by Energy Blasting 2, choose a unit being attacked, and it gets plus 20,000 to the end of that battle, and the most important part, which came in really helpful in blocking that one Blagmire attack, I don't care, it was one attack and I will hold myself to that, you can play one more Blitz order this turn. When you play this card, the number you play increases. Now, here's the reason why I bring this up. Against decks like Blagmire, which nullified the Vanguard's abilities, it is very important to be able to play more defensive cards a turn. Shadow Dreamblade, because it's an ability the Order has, and so far no cards can nullify Order abilities, at least, we can play Shadowvescent Dream, get more orders, and get more defensive power. Because a free 20 is just a free FU to your opponent in most situations. Like, this is a good card. And the fact that you can play more of them in a deck that can recycle them back, it's pretty solid. For Effervescent Shadow Dreamblade, it's just a good card to have, and it's nice. It's just good. Then we move on to 4 copies of my all-time favorite Grade 2, and I play this deck aggressively, so that's why this is my favorite Grade 2 compared to this Grade 2, which technically works better because it can fetch back the order, and that is Velino Soldato Grudiol. So grade 2 instead of 5k shield, 10k base, auto when placed on rearguard circle. If you have a grade 3 grade Vanguard with the Scry in his card name, so sadly you can't early game rush with him. Soul Blast 2 to 1 Velino is different card name from this unit with a grade less than equal to your Vanguard, call it to rearguard circle. So works the second you get to grade 3, get you more rear guards out of Velino. Sadly can't call itself, but it also fills up your drop zone, which is nice, and it continues rear guard circle during your turn. If you have 3 or more units with Velino in their card names, this unit will get boost and 5k power. It's a 15k booster, which, as we explained with Foray, is pretty good, but what more importantly is actually better than Foray because it's a 15k booster on its own. Meaning with Lascaria, who to actually get that 5k does the exact same thing this one does, means this thing will be a 20k booster. Or 20k swinger, which doesn't sound that great until we factor in at least a 13k booster, possibly going to 15 if it's 4-way. I will tell you this right now, I can get 4-ways onto the board like 24/7. Like almost every game, I have at least 2 of them in the back row. Some games I have 3. Point is, you will almost always have a 15k booster, so yeah. Either way, Gridori's just good. It's a 15 to 20k booster, and it gets you rear guards by being placed. It works during the battle phase, so if they ever give us a Velino that can call it during battle phase, there we go. 4 of Gridero. Just a very good grade 2, and I love it. Then we have 4 copies of probably people's more favorite of the 2 Velinos, because again, I like to play the deck aggressively, so I like to play Grudori more, which is why the defensive side doesn't work with me that much, but Malia is the more defensive one. Again, the more Velinos they give us, the more they're kind of shifting to their 2 different playstyles of Velinos, and hopefully I remember to bring it up later, but in case, and I want to show off the grade 3s, because that's what originally gave me this idea, but in case I don't bring it up later, currently we have like 2 ideas going in Velinos, but you don't want to split them apart yet because we have very limited Velinos, and that is the aggressive route and the defensive route. Melina is more of the defensive one, Grudea is more of the offensive one here, and then as for the grade 1s, technically they're both splashable in each, but Ferroya, in my opinion, is more of the aggressive one just because of how I've used her, and then Chikaraga is more of the defensive one based off of how I've used him, and by how I've used him, I mean lack of how I used him. Anyways, Malia, grade 2 is a 5k shield, 10k base, auto when placed on rearguard circle other than during the battle phase. If you have a grade 3 grade Vanguard with Lascaria in its card name, ditch your hand card, choose a card with a different card name from this unit from your drop zone, call it to rearguard circle if it's a grade 3 or less unit card with Velino's card name, and put it to your hand if it's a blitz order. So either it can fetch back your defensive option, which is why I call it the defensive one, or it can fetch you back more rear guards, such as Grudoro, who does not have to be placed from hand, who can then get you another Velino. For Melina, she's very good. She's nice for recovery option. She's nice for either defense recovery option or offense recovery option. All around, she's a very solid grade 2, and you would run her in either build regardless, but she does have more defensive potential than Grudori does for the simple fact she can add the order back, and he can't. For Malia. And we have our last grade 2 in the deck, one of in the right deck, and in the main deck of Oath Upon Mother Sword of Lascaria. Grade 2 is a 5k shield, 10k base. Auto rolled upon by a grade 3 card of Lascaria in its card name. Look at the top 5 cards rejected to 1 normal unit with Velino in its card name from among them, or up to 1 blitz order from among them. Reveal, put it to your hand, shuffle your deck. All are pretty solid because it can either add the defensive blitz order, or it can add pretty much half of your deck all in one go, and then instant gate loops because Malia can get cards, this can get cards, this can get cards, and then the grade 3s act as pressure. So one of the Lascaria Mother Swords, she can also add a Persona Ride because again the main grade 3 does have Velino's card name, so nice to have one of the red decks having on the main deck because she doesn't have a rear guard skill, but considering this is a very rear guard focused deck, I can give the ride line a pass for not having a rear guard skill in this deck. And then we have our grade 3s. First up, we have 3 copies of Velino from Magilia Parasalia. Grade 3, 200% right, 13k base. I have no idea if that's how you pronounce it, but that name felt so, like, not singular, but it felt like each word kind of slid off the last one, so it's a lot easier to say. I don't know. Anyways, auto rear guard when the attacks into a vanguard. If you have a grade 3 greater vanguard, let's in his card name. Card boss won't choose one opponent's rear guards until end of your opponent's next turn. That unit cannot intercept, and that unit cannot stand during the stand phase. For those of you that don't know, I hate control decks, both playing as them and playing against them. To be more exact, I find it more fun to play against control decks than I do playing as control decks, because getting past a control deck's bullshit, even if it's just like once, like even if it's just one turn, either because they fucked up or like you found the one out to them, even if you lose, if you get to do anything at all, it feels so liberating. It felt like you've conquered the world, like you climbed Mount Everest for no arbitrary reason. Even if you lose, it still feels like you accomplished something, while comparatively playing a control deck is just like shut down your opponent, and you only really feel the sense of loss because if they break through at all, even if you win, it still sucks. But you know, if they if they get shut down all the way, it's just a boring match. Though, to also be fair, I don't play control decks the way control decks should be played. Like, the one I always like to use the example of is mill, because apparently in a lot of other games, or in every game that has a mill deck, people play control mill to shut down your opponent while they mill you out. And the reason why I say apparently is because I've never done that. My idea of mill is run through with as many mill cards as physically possible and try to deck you out as fast as possible, and the only controlling way I see in that is you arbitrarily hitting your ace cards into the drop zone off of the factors of RNG and nothing else. Like, if you want a fun mill player to play against because you think mill's fun, you just hate how people play it controllingly, play against me, because you're not going to find a control at all. If you find a control card, it's probably by pure accident, or it has the potential to be a control card, but I promise you I do not use it that way. Anyways, Parasilla is a nice card though, because it locks down your opponent at least one rear guard, and that one rear guard to make the difference, like I did against Blagdmire to try to stop his boost. If you can't tell, I'm very hung up on that Blagdmire match. And then Blagdmire countered by being able to call that same grade 1 from Soul. But you know what, it gave me a little bit of hope, and it made me like this card a little bit more because it does shut something down. And I don't know why, but this looks like Arbitros Dragon to me. Arboros Dragon, and I didn't like Arboros Dragon originally, but I don't know why. Like, these butterfly wings make me like it a little bit. So 3 of Parasilla is a nice control card, and then the more control version, you want number 4 of her, but obviously 3 of, because I like the aggressive version. Speaking of the aggressive version, the aggressive grade 3 version of her, Velino Caborajim Erforis. I'm not even going to try pronouncing that name properly. Grade 3, 200% 13k base, auto rear guard once per turn. I knew I forgot to highlight something. At the end about your grade 3 or greater vanguard with Lascaria and his card name attack. If your opponent's vanguards are grade 3 or greater, it gets counterboss 1. Not counterboss 1. It does not get the skill. It has the skill. Counterboss 1, stand this unit, and if you have 3 or more units of Velino in their card names, again, very easy to pull off, because it's just itself, the vanguard already, and any other card in the deck that is a normal unit, this unit gets plus power for that turn. All around, pretty solid. It gets more multi-attack, which is nice. The only downside is it eats into the CB, which is why these two constantly compete. And again, if you are playing more aggressively like I do, you're probably going to use Erforis more than you're going to use Parasilla, but they are both nice to have in the deck because one locks down, one gets multi-attack. They're both very good cards, and if you have 2 of these on board, you get 5 attacks a turn when your Vanguard has double crit on it, and you have a total of 7 crits and 4 fronts walking into this. You definitely have the offensive power to pressure out your opponent's guard. Nice grade 3, 4 of, and again, the 2 alternate builds I want to talk about is because since Powerless over here focuses on defensive and locking your opponent down, and Erforis over here focuses on standing, I do imagine at some point we're going to get more Velino support cards because unlike, not Friends, but unlike the Earnest Scout cards, where they took like 2 sets to get actual extra Earnest corrects, Velino's got an extra 3 Velinos in the following set after they were released. So I'm imagining we're going to get actual consistent amount of Velinos, and if we do, I'm willing to bet they're going to fall under, some of them are going to be the more aggressive category like Erforis, or maybe they actively call more cards to rear guard but can't get the blitz orders, or maybe search more cards just in case but again can't get the blitz orders, while there's going to be the line of Parasillas where maybe they can search the blitz orders, or maybe they can get the blitz orders back from drop guaranteed, but then they also focus more on stunning the opponent's rear guards, which I find would be very interesting. Even though I am against control decks, I am kind of waiting to see the Mega Colony return, just because I feel like it's been hinted at a long time now. So if Bushy ends up throwing down an actual control deck based around Mega Colony, I would not be the least bit surprised, and I wouldn't stop them. So yeah, either way, those are the 2 alternate decks I imagine us getting in the future if we get a consistent line of Velinos, because it's already very present, at least in their current amount of cards. Now we move on to our last card of the deck, 1 of in the ride deck, 3 of in the main deck of Sword Princess of Dreamblade, Lascaria, Velino. So, first up, I love her sword. I love swords, and her sword looks beautiful. Grade 3, 200% right, 13k base. Continuous Vanguard during your turn if you have 3 or more units with Velino in their card names, including herself. All your Velino units get up 5,000 power. And then if you have 5 or more, again, including herself, and the opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, this unit gets a crit. I hate the fact that it requires the opponent to be a grade 3 or greater. I understand it though, because I've played this deck enough to know that this deck can spam out Velinos out the wazoo, especially because they don't have to be different names. And considering this being played in Stoicheia, a deck which can actively mill themselves and then superior call from drop all before first grade 3 turn, yeah, it makes sense why that crit's restricted to the opponent being a grade 3. But, you know, 5k pressure. Sadly, you don't get the standoff of Ephrys over here because the opponent also has to be a grade 3. But at least you get to lock down with Paracilla, and pretty much everything else over here goes off. So all around, she is pretty solid for that ability alone, getting the extra attack pressure, which honestly is what the deck needed to give it that attack pressure so it can keep up with the aggro deck. So they did a good job there. And the other effect is Auto Vanguard. At the end of battle, your unit was attacked. Doesn't matter if it was this unit or your rear guard, and the attack did not hit. If you played a Blitz order that battle, draw a card, and if you did not countercharge this turn, countercharge 1. So all of your CB spamming with these guys, at least, you know, get dropped down to -1 thanks to the Velino skill, though is not nearly enough to keep up with the CB of the deck if you're trying to use everyone at once. But on the bright side, every time you play the Blitz order, you get to draw a card, meaning each time you spam Evanescence, you get to draw a card. And if you run that one in grade 1 that I used to run in the set 1 version of the build, the Burstinger, who gets you an extra Blitz order, there is more options to get more hand cards and an alternate cost to pay, though that card does dig into soul, and I like Grudori, so that's my opinion. But you know what? That's the defensive version right there. You play Burstinger with it because you're not running Grudori in that version because you're too busy trying to stall your opponent. Or maybe you do run Grudori, but you don't run it for the second. You don't run it for the first skill, you run it for the second skill. So you know what? That's the possible defensive option. I now realize that I pretty much set myself up to where if Bushy actually does that, I now have to build an aggressive and defensive version of each deck for Velino if they end up giving us consistent Velinos. Bushy, if you're watching this, don't actually do that because I now realize I've made myself more work than I actually needed to. Oh god, screw me. Anyways, one of in the main deck, or sorry, one of in the right deck, 3 of in the main deck. It's a nice card. It gets good numbers. It's literally searchable by the entirety of the deck that has any form of search power, meaning you can hit Personize very easily. And not to mention the fact, you know, countercharge, draw, nice to have, good card. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, it's actually very fun to play. I don't really like defensive or stall decks too much. So when the defensive option eventually does come up, I will probably make a deck profile on it. And then I will resent myself through the entirety of it. A, because I remember having said it in this video that I will have to do it. But then also because I just don't like stall decks that much. But the deck as it is right now is fun to play. While it does have those essence of stalling, it doesn't have too many of them. And it can still focus on the rush, or it can fluctuate between offense and defense, depending on how many of like each card you pull. Like for example, I like to play the offensive style, and I don't know that the deck just responding to me, but I seem to pull the cards I consider more offensively, Ferore, Grudorio, and Ephrys, a lot more often than I pull the other ones. Like, as you can see, every one of them is at the same copies as each other, except for the grade 3s, but even then, Ephrys, I always pull him opening hand. I almost always draw Ferore immediately. I rarely see Chitaraka, even though it's at the same copies as Ferore. And then same with Malil, even though she's at the same copies of Grudori, I rarely see her. I feel like the deck's responding to that aspect of me, you know, wanting to be more aggressive. And I know with the search options, I obviously pick the more aggressive options, but the deck can swap between offense and defense if it really needs to. And the deck's eventually going to get 2 variants, and I've already forced myself to cover them. But you know what? We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Until then, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm this one here. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us for Twitch, and I'll see you on this one. Don't forget to set up your Vanguards.